advises to do, seems to work. And then that, gives us confidence that why would the Buddha start making up things as far as karma? Why can't, why shouldn't I be able to put my confidence in the Buddha? And that's, so unlike other aspects where you can develop the faith of conviction from logic and your experience, with karma, it really is about your faith of conviction in everything else. So, so it's kind of frustrating. But I do think that just looking at the effect of our minds, our states of mind on, when we start to really become observant of what's going on in our minds all day long, and then we notice, that there seems to be a pattern between the way we think and how we experience things, we start to get a sense of how this is all interconnected. That it's not just that things happen randomly out here, although it looks like it, and that we, respond sort of appropriately. The Buddhists said we're really out of control due to our past actions and habits of mind. So, this is important to keep in mind when we're trying to work on, these practices, to not judge ourselves harshly or each other harshly, because the habits, if the Buddhist teachings are correct, the habits have been cultivated, for an inconceivable amount of time. And so to overcome them, it takes a lot of effort. And it also takes a lot of will, not like willpower. It's really more like, really understanding what's in it for you, and then, being determined to succeed, so that every time you fall down, you'll get up again and try again, because it's that important to you. It's like, have you ever worked for something really, really, really hard because you just wanted it? It's that kind of motivation that we need. We need to really, really want a peaceful mind, a rational mind, a loving mind. We really want to, do as much as we can to support our desire to change our habits of mind. So it's just about noticing things that we go, I want to have that kind of mind. So, to help us remember why in those moments where the pressure to just respond habitually overtakes us, that we can just try to step back and reinforce, our desire to interrupt that habit, because it's hard. So, okay, so I don't know what, that's my pep talk for this evening.
So this is essentially the red slide, isn't it?
Yeah, it's basically the red slide. It's not, but it's really, it's not the red slide in that the red slide is about our tendency to judge. We judge ourselves and we judge everybody else. It's like we get a little information and we use it to make decisions about who's worthy, who is not, and we're included in that crowd. But it's just, it really is interesting, our habit of going outward. It's like we immediately go outward. We don't go inward and see, what am I doing? We tend to kind of go, I know what they're thinking, but just, it's funny. And I'm sure arises out of this belief that our happiness and suffering is dependent on things external to us. We think, it's if, everybody treats me right, or if I get what I want, or if I don't get what I don't want. You know, that we just have this strong belief that our states of mind are completely dependent on what's happening to us, or what appears to be happening to us, our perception of that. Oh, let's see what's on the next slide. Okay, so this is all about giving us the information we need to make better choices, you know. I think we've read this before. If we accept the results of karma with wisdom and patience, rather than with anger and impatience, it simply burns itself out. And that means that we do not have to experience it again. And again, we want to remember that it's, you know, if we do something, like if we, you know, kind of feel our mouth opening and the words slipping out, and our mind's going, no, please don't go, you know, that regret helps stop the negativity of the karma. You know, it really helps put a little book into it, you know, so that it doesn't grow so much. You know, so it does help to you know, not kind of react with oh well, or just, you know, just kind of like, too late now. It's not too late. I mean, just, you know, just having that mind that goes, ooh, that wasn't skillful, or I wish I hadn't said that, or this is exactly why I don't want to be like this. Those things help reinforce our motivation to keep working on it. And when your mind's really powerful, it becomes possible to reverse the, you know, you just, because your thought has completely gone in the other direction, you know, you have basically, you know, begun the purification of it right there. Okay, so we've talked a lot about how to, well, we haven't talked a lot about how to purify. I want to talk about how to purify our past actions. Is this of interest?
Yes.
Would you rather talk about the hell realms? We can do that. I have a suspicion that's just not really all high on our list. So some jargon. When something negative is happening for us, you know, like we get really sick, or we get a little sick, you know, we get a headache, whatever. Our tire is flat on our car. That's the ripening of some negative result, you know, from some past action. And so when it ripens, that means it's exhausting. You know, once it ripens, we can't do anything to stop it from ripening because that's already happened. But it means it's exhausting. Now, if we want to turn that circumstance into an opportunity to purify our past negative actions, then we need to look at it and apply the 4 opponent powers. Okay? So we'll kind of go through that. So we can use this in like more of a formal practice, like when we're doing meditation or before we go to sleep at night. We can do a purification practice for whatever we notice has gone terribly wrong that day, or a little bit wrong that day, or, you know, wish we could take it back thing. So, but we can also use it in the moment of things as a way, you know, to try to prevent similar seeds from ripening in the future. So if something negative is ripening, what does karma say about that? What's the reason something negative is happening?
There's a causes and conditions, or you know, it's due to a past action, a past.
Yeah, that you created this. You know, you just don't know how. So that's an opportunity to take responsibility for it. It doesn't mean you've done anything in this life necessarily for this to ripen. You know, it's just that, oh, well, here we go. This is a result that I created, that I created the cause for. So now it's ripened. So regret. Those of you who studied guilt and regret with me before are familiar with this. So His Holiness was asked one time about the difference between guilt and regret, the regret of the four opponent powers. And he said, guilt is looking into the past and saying, I did this and this and this and this, and I am a bad person. Regret is very simply recognizing, yes, indeed, I did this and this and this. And then you think, so what can I do about it? So it's a very proactive kind of thing. It's not about turning it into some other burden to carry around with you for the rest of time. It's about just kind of going, okay, so what can you do? We're not Buddhas. We're going to make tons of mistakes. So when something happens, when something's ripening, we can say, oh, I wonder what I did to cause this result. And you don't need to spend a whole lot of time trying to figure it out, because you probably can't figure it out. I mean, every now and then you might think, oh yeah, I've treated others exactly this way. So, you don't really have any doubt of, how you might have created this result. So like if somebody's yelling at you, you might be able to remember all the times you yelled at someone. Or if somebody's accusing you of doing something wrong, you might remember all the times that you jumped to that conclusion about someone else, And so now you're getting, what goes around comes around kind of feeling, And then you want to regret it, think, wow, I don't like how this feels. Now that I'm the recipient of it, it's lousy. And so this, and I harm someone else this way. And it might even be this very person who's doing it to me. That's what the teachings, I think, imply. I'm not sure they directly state that. Lama Zopa Rinpoche absolutely says that. But it's, so it's this opportunity to spend a moment going, wow, I am sorry I ever caused someone to feel this way. I don't like it, So, you want to generate that genuine regret. So then if it's not something that you're looking at that's just like you've gotten sick or something, you want to, if it's something you did that day, you want to remember, oh, I wish, I regret having done that. I already know that's unskillful. I know how it feels when someone does it to me, and I'm really sorry. Or I just noticed their facial expression, or, that it was harmful, or I just know that it's unskillful in the long run. Whatever it is, there are many varieties of this, So we have to really allow ourselves to have that experience of sadness and compassion for the person we've harmed, as well as for ourselves. We can have that, but it's this real, we're taking responsibility for having been the harm doer. Questions? Yeah.
Sometimes for me it feels like I'm letting myself off the hook when I express regret and remorse.
Oh, because it's not big enough?
Yeah, kind of, it's like...
That's pride.
Yeah.
We have to really understand that and it's also self-grasping. It's this, it's this, I can't read your mind, so you have to look and discover for yourself what's going on in there, but it can be a couple of different things. One of it is this holding on to this idea, I am the worst of the worst, which is like I, said before, it's on the continuum of pride, it's the opposite of of what we generally think of as pride. But it's holding on to a sense of ourselves that is an exaggeration of its negativity. You know, it's taking too much power. You know, it's like when you feel like, oh, it's all my fault that, you know, I don't know, I've done it in so many ways, you know, like, oh, you know, I don't know, I can't think of a thing at the moment. You know, you practically didn't think that you're the cause of bad weather. You know, I feel like it's all my fault. You know, this day's a lousy day or something, you know. Well, gee, aren't you important? You know, I mean, there's something so inflated about it. And we need to recognize that, you know, that it's kind of funny that we can think we're, you know, I mean, it's also sad that we, you know, we feel we carry this burden that, you know, we should take on all the misery of the world because it's our fault, you know. So so whenever we're doing either extreme, you know, where we think we're exaggerating our good qualities to the point of ridiculousness because it's not true, you know. Oh, I'm perfect. See, I know how to do this job better than anybody else, you know, da 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 da. That's a clue, you know, you're you're not being accurate. And then when you're doing it in the negative end, same thing. So you want to look if that's going on. If you're overinflating your sense of importance. And then it's that, you know, you really want to ask yourself, what do I think's in it for me if I hold on to this as being too light of an apology? What does that mean, even? It may mean that you're not really regretting it, you know, so you want to look out for that. If you're not really regretting it, then you're right, you're letting yourself off the hook. So, you know, but if you genuinely regret it, what is the purpose of holding on to it? Why do we think that's useful?
Habit.
Well, it's a lot of habit.
Insecurity.
Reputation, like in what way?
I don't want people to think less of me.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times we really want to erase our past, not just, please don't find out, you know, kind of thing. Habit, we have the habit of doing it. You know, we live in a culture that often kind of tells us we should feel guilty for the rest of time if we've done certain things. So, you know, we have to recognize, though, for me, I know what the main underlying thing is, and, you know, I don't like to admit this, but it's, you know, it really is, oh, I don't have to change because this is just the way I am. So it just gives me permission to stay being a jerk, you know.
So this is a really good question, right? So why would I want to remain invested in it? There's, you know, the psychological terms often it said there's a payoff in there for me somewhere. So using Buddhist practice, how would I begin to uncover that or discover that?
You just have to look.
Right, well, that's very difficult sometimes. It seems clouded.
It is clouded because of your obscurations. You may need more merit to see it. Just have to keep trying. You know, it's sort of like, and you have to be able to, you know, it's this, we don't need to figure it out. We have to watch when we are grasping at the need to figure it out, because we want to be able to explain it all away, you know. That this is the reason I'm like this, you know, da 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 da. Well, the Buddha said, I'm sorry. The reason why you think is that you're grasping at your sense of self, and you're inflating its importance. You know, that's self-cherishing. So we don't have to get, you know, much more precise than that to know, well, it probably has something to do. You know, it's helpful sometimes if you can see a pattern in your behavior that indicates, you know, like, oh, you just don't want to change.
But at the same time, I'm not just going to blame it all on my mother and move on. I mean, there's got to be...
There's no one to blame
right.
but you.
Yeah, right. So
So
how do I I guess you say keep trying, just keep looking.
Well, and to just take responsibility that probably somewhere in this behavior is something that is some incorrect idea that this will benefit me. You know?
Thank you, that helps.
You know, and just, it's, that's what that self-interest does, is that we're acting, because that's how we act. And it may be really hidden behind a lot of social graces. You know, I probably just didn't have many social graces, so it's a little more obvious for me. It's like, selfish. So, you know, but if you have more social graces, perhaps, you might, you know, it might be harder for you to do, but I just always ask, and why, and why? You know, whenever, you know, what, you know, and why, and eventually I'll usually hit something like, oh, that's where it is. You know, I want this, you know. I don't want to have to keep trying and failing. I just want it to be okay that I'm like this, you know. It's, and that's an error, because I'm really not okay with it. I don't like the results of it, and the results aren't going to change just because I want them to. You know, it's not going to do that. So it's accepting that our actions have consequences, and if we want different consequences, we have to change our actions. So and then, you know, the Buddha just gave us these great big clues about the fact that we're always acting out from this self-interest, self-centered focus. I mean, self-centered in the very basic sense of being the center of our universe. You know, so we tend to do everything from that perspective. And since we think that getting what we want and not getting what we don't want is the means to happiness, you know, we keep, you know, we keep thinking it's external, we keep trying to control the externals, you know, we tend to go outward instead of inward. You know. And I do think that guilt it has a tendency to be all about me. It's not about the other person. You're not feeling sorry for the other person for what you've done. You're really feeling sorry for yourself. So it's not, it's inner, you know, it's another form of self-cherishing, you know, because it's all about you. You don't want to look this way. You don't want to feel bad, you know, whatever. I mean, you're just thinking about you, not how you can maybe make amends to someone else.
Or rectify the situation. Yeah,
Or rectify the
exactly
situation,
right.
whatever. Yeah.
You're right. Thank you. That was really helpful.
So it's, I have a lot of experience on this topic. So it's really helpful in the evening when we kind of go through our day to learn how to wait until we have an experience of regret. You know, so not, you know, really try to get beyond the words and allow yourself to feel that squirmy uncomfortableness of the harm we've done. Not to make a big deal out of it, but in order for it to really have the power of regret, we really need to take on, oh, I did this to someone. I made them feel bad. Or they're going to feel bad later on when whatever it is I've started in motion finally hits them, you know. So, or even if it's something that you do, but it doesn't have a direct, you know, the person, you know, say like, I don't know, say you have something that you're doing for, you know, you're at work, but you also have other things in your life, you know, and so, you know, you realize, oh, I really need this for this other thing I'm doing in my life. And so you steal the supplies you need from work because you don't have time to go get them and blah, 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 you know, and you just kind of ignore the fact that these are not your belongings, and you don't ask permission, you don't do anything, and nobody knows about it, right? You know? So, on those kinds of occasions, we have to allow ourselves to remember that if the owner of these things knew about it, how would they feel? Would they be, if they know you well, have tremendous trust in you as an employee or as a, whatever, coworker, would that change? Would you somehow, diminish their feeling of safety? We have to look at the ways in which our actions affect people, Like if you find out, if you're an owner of a small business or something, and then you find out one day all your employees are stealing from you, that wouldn't be a very good feeling. So we want to be able to look, put ourselves in the other person's shoes. And not just look at it, like in terms of monetary value or something. We want to look at what it really means to be untrustworthy. So it'll have consequences to others, but it also will have consequences to ourselves, in the future. So we really want to be able to have this sort of sense of, an experience that arises, that we can kind of, really acknowledge, I've done this harm. So, this is the kind of thing you might say in a practice, and we'll do practice in a minute. But, I regret all the negative actions I have done, caused to be done, or rejoiced in when others did them. I regret all the negativities I can remember, as well as all those I've forgotten about in this life and previous lives. So this is what you do in addition to, oh, I really said something sharp to someone today. Then you say, and so I regret all the time I've ever done that. And then I regret everything else I've ever done with my speech. That, you just try to, this is just a habit we want to get into. We want to recognize that if we do something once, it probably means we have a habit of it. So we don't want to ignore all the other occasions that we may have done this. That helps us strengthen our resolve to change it. This is also the kind of thing you might think when, like, say you get sick and you're just going, oh, I created the cause for this, and nobody else is being harmed. You're just experiencing the result of your negative actions, Ooh, this sucks. I regret this. But we have to remember, so this is where getting familiar with what could be the cause of an illness. And it means that we've caused harm to others' health in the past. So we may have killed them, and so we've gone to the hell realms, we're finished with that. But now we're in the human realm, and now we're getting sick a lot. That kind of thing. So we really want to, okay, I really want to understand, and not only that, but just this sense of, and I'm not alone. Everybody gets sick. It's not, so let's turn this into an opportunity to generate compassion for everybody else who's sick, just like I am right at this moment. And I can even make the wish that let me exhaust all that negative karma so that nobody else has to. We can't actually do that, but if you can imagine, that helps grow our mind, our desire to be able to, do things for others. Does that make sense? Not that it's like easy to do or easy to be sincere about. So that's the first opponent power, is regret. So it's okay to regret them from the point of view of yourself. I regret these negative actions, want to purify them completely because I do not wish to suffer in the future like this again. So, this is the purpose of purification practices. Like it's a very common practice in the Tibetan tradition for people to do a 2 or 3 month retreat doing 100,000 Vajrasattva recitations, which is a long mantra. And, you know, it's because, you know, we really want to take on this recognition of our unskillfulness and do what we can to try to clean up a lot of it all at once, because it can prevent things from ripening in the future. Hello?
Battery.
There's tape. So how many, I mean, this idea of doing it because we have some benefit. Anybody have trouble with that? I agree. Turn it off before you do all that. Very clever. Okay, so it's, cultivating this mind. There are a couple of things about this. This, I don't want to suffer. That's a big part of our motivation for change. So we really do want to acknowledge that. I don't want to suffer. Now, what do we usually do when we're thinking that? Oh, maybe y'all don't do it. We go, yeah? Right. And I don't want to suffer, so you change. Something has to give, and it has to be you. So, we try to control things out here. What the Buddha is trying to get us to understand is if we really want to stop suffering, then we have to change our mind. And then we actually can stop our suffering. So instead of always looking outward to what can I change out here, doesn't mean you don't go take an aspirin or get your vaccine or take the medicine or go to the hospital, none of that. It just means you understand there's, the truth of suffering, but there's also the truth of the cause of suffering. And if we're at, if that's us, then we can do something about it. This is the really good news. We don't have to find, the perfect partner, the perfect job, the perfect place to live, the perfect anything. Because the source of our suffering is within, and we can change that. We don't have to move anywhere, we don't have to, So it's, yes?
You asked if any of us have trouble with wanting to avoid personal suffering,
Mm-hmm.
and through that realizing regret. I guess my question is something I struggled with before, and maybe I was overanalyzing it, but I thought, is it, if I asked myself, am I worried about actually hurting this person, or am I worried about the guilt I'll feel from hurting this person? So is it really selfishness underlying it, or is it genuine concern?
Does it matter?
Or is it the mere presence of that, the fear of that guilt mean I care?
I would say the fear of that guilt means you understand that it's harmful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you know right from wrong, so if, the psychologist in the murder trial is asking you this, they would say, Anthony knows. He did wrong or not. So, so this is one of those things, that can be a clue, that if we, and we just need to understand that's a perfectly good way to start. You know, if you check, you know, we want to acknowledge there's something in it for me, you know, in order to work towards that just doesn't even arise. There will still be something in it for you. The biggest beneficiary of you developing bodhicitta is you. You will suffer less. You know? So we sort of don't have to worry about it. That will take care of itself. But when we're beginning, we have to have a motivation to kind of really, you know, because it's a lot of work. And I just have to remind myself all the time that so is worrying, so is hateful comments, so all of those things are a lot of work. So it's just redirecting our energy. But so it's, you know, I think it's good to notice, you know, if, you know, it's like, it's easier in the examples like, am I really doing this so other people will think well of me? You know. And we really have to look at that. Because that's really all about our reputation. Doesn't mean we shouldn't act that way. It's just whether or not, I mean, is it going to give us merit? No, probably not. You know, it just depends. Everything just depends. So, you know, it's like the teachings say that from generosity come resources. It doesn't say from generosity with a good motivation comes resources. So you can be generous with a lousy motivation and still create the cause to receive resources. But you might not receive the resources you're really hoping for. You know, Dharma resources don't come from bad motivated generosity. You know, so it's you know, it's I mean, this hence the water bowls. This idea of doing a practice where it's really likely you're not going to regret what you're giving, you know, which is water. So, you know, it's a way to develop the mind that wants to give. And from that, there'll be resources. And if we just keep growing that mind, eventually, we won't be doing it for the wrong reasons. If we have a spiritual path. If you don't, you might continue with the wrong reasons. Of course, you won't be doing water balls, but you know, it's, and you may have tremendous wealth in the future or future lives, but it will not, since it hasn't protected your mind at all. You know, you're really doing it for greedy, selfish reasons. You know, it's just not going to have the have a longer impact. I don't know how to explain that, but it's like, you know, if you do something with the desire to become enlightened, that the results from that action can last a very long time. You know. So, and if you keep doing that, then your good conditions to meet the teachings, to keep developing your mind, all that stuff are much more likely, and having the resources to be able to do it, you know. So it's a very different kind of action because of the motivation, the thought. You know, remember that thought includes the recognition of the object, then the motivation, and then the underlying reason. So if that underlying reason is bodhicitta, you know, this is a powerful action, a virtuous action. Question?
I have a question.
Yes.
Isn't stopping a behavior because it's causing you to suffer, isn't that really the wrong reason? Shouldn't it be that you have compassion for the person that you're causing, you're performing the action against?
Well, I mean, shouldn't is not really a useful word, you know, because you can also have compassion
Would
for
it be preferable?
No, I mean, you can also have compassion for yourself. We are one of the suffering sentient beings. Now, eventually, what our practice is aiming for is the thought of ourselves just doesn't arise. It's not that we have to actively not think of ourselves. It just doesn't come up because we practice the mind that cherishes others so completely. And we also have started to recognize that cherishing others is the means to happiness, that we're no longer concerned about the way in which we chase happiness now. It just won't come up. So it sort of comes down to the same thing. It's like, understanding the truth of suffering and the truth of the cause of suffering. We need to know that. And we're the cause of our suffering. So wanting to stop our actions because we're sick of our suffering, it helps us lead to renunciation, to be done with cyclic resistance. Now, if we want to become Buddhas, then we want to develop a type of renunciation that includes bodhicitta. So our renunciation becomes imbued with the desire to benefit others. So that's definitely the preferable, It's actually just a quicker path. Because everybody eventually, if someone becomes liberated from samsara, and they realize how things exist, that's the way you become liberated, they're going to want to help others. But they have to go back. If it's a board game, they'd be going back to step, like 3, and developing this motivation, doing all their actions based on the motivation of wanting to benefit others. So, so they have to repeat grades. Not exactly repeat them, but it just takes a little more time. So if we start from the beginning of having this extra motivation, or trying to cultivate that extra motivation. So, you kind of start with, well, I don't want to suffer. And I also am tired of causing others to suffer. So out of compassion for myself and compassion for others, I remember my high school yearbook, I think my quote in it was something like, I feel sorry for the friends I used to know. So, we really need to take on the truth of suffering and the truth of the cause of suffering. And so the way you do that is to recognize that you're suffering. And we want to have the experience of that, not keep shying away from it, because it is through our experience of our own suffering that we really get how others suffer. We don't have to guess. We know what it feels like to suffer in this way. So we don't want to suppress that. We want to, really, experience it. And then we want to recognize that we created the cause for that. And so if we want that to end, we need to change the way we're doing things. And this is where, remembering there's another wing, the wisdom wing, of really understanding the way we experience things, because of the way we, that everything appears to us to exist in a particular way, that incorrect basis for our experience distorts how we even judge things moment to moment. We make them much bigger and more important than we need to. It's sort of like this idea, when you're, I really read too many murder mysteries. I can see this, So when that bullet is whizzing towards you, you want to think, well, next life, as opposed to SOB, how dare you? Because that's not the mind you want. So, Instead, you kind of go, oh, I wonder what I do. But really understand that this grasping at this self, this life, this body, which really is way past wanting to hold on to, is keeping me stuck. But that we can really kind of step back a little and not be so concerned. Now, this is very hard to do, but this is why we need to keep investigating emptiness, how things actually exist, and keep working on it, because we are fooled by the appearance of things. Everything is the manifestation of our karma. What happens when we have nothing but good karma? Yeah, we manifest a Buddha field. Our experience is based on our past actions. It is no more real than that. It is just a dependent arising. It's dependent on our past actions. So when we quit doing these, unskillful past actions, our experience will be quite different. Anybody else cold? I'm weird. Okay. I shaved my head this morning. That's what it is. It's always very cold. So you lose all the heat. It's freezing. I don't know if I've got it or not. I just the press set it at 79 or something. And then when we get hot, I'll be the first one to turn it. So.
I'll shave my head. Then I'll shave my head.
Yes, it'll be cold. And then you get Velcro head. Velcro head is like the second day after shaving your head. You can't move it on a pillow. It's the weirdest thing. So, actually, I don't get it. I don't keep it that short anymore. So I don't have to deal with it. Velcro head. Okay. Okay, so that's the first opponent power, regret. Okay, so the second, these are, the people I studied with kind of ended up with naming all the 4 opponent powers by the letter R, so it would make it easy for us to remember it. But it won't always be the letter R. No. So can you think of another phrase that says, besides reliance? I can't remember.
I think there was a different one in the book.
Yeah, there is. But I don't, hence why I use all R's, because I can't remember the.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Oh, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. This happens a lot. So anyway, reliance. Okay, so this is the idea that, I think I've read this before, or maybe it was a different class. I'm getting old. Let's say you haven't taken poison, but you've heard about some amazing doctor in Timbuktu who can cure every possible poison, who's got every antidote. You hear about this doctor, and you go, oh yeah, that's interesting, and then you forget all about it. You don't really care because you haven't taken any poison, so you don't need this doctor. But who's that doctor? You'll do anything to see her, and now you'll listen to every word she says. You'll take her words seriously, and you'll totally rely upon her because now you need her. Why? Because you don't want to suffer or die from the poison. This is going for refuge. You're taking refuge in the doctor's knowledge. So the reason we want to rely upon the Buddha and practice what he's saying is because we've looked into the teachings and it makes some kind of sense, and you know you don't want suffering, so you know that you need his methods. Or at least you're willing to try them out. The Buddha can't purify you. He doesn't make it go away. You do. You need him because of his method, like you need the doctor, but you do the work. So in the same way, you rely on the Buddha. So just like, the doctor doesn't really cure you, he has the tools, maybe he gives you medicine, but you have to take the medicine. He says you need surgery, you have to show up. You know, there's a interdependent thing going on there. Then we can think that, you know, my mind is a dependent arising. It arises from causes and conditions. For this reason, it can change. It's up to me whether it changes in a positive or negative direction. You know, because this is what the teachings are telling us. This is a reliance on the teachings. We can rely on the most subtle level of our minds, which is our Buddha potential. The potential we have to completely transform our minds so that all our good qualities are perfected and nothing negative remains, not even the slightest bit. So we can rely on this future state, or the basis we have for this future state.
Could you go back one, just for,
This one?
yes.
This is really an important one. If we keep remembering, you know, what we know about cause and effect in the physical universe, you know, that it all depends. We have results if all the causes and conditions were, you know, present. The Buddha said this is the same thing, even with consciousness. When you introduce consciousness into it, you know, that becomes one of the causes. We still need all the conditions, but they're all changeable. Because things are dependent arising, it means they can change. You know, it's like if you have the habit of, you know, of alcoholism. My mother was an alcoholic, but the first 20-something years of her life, she lived in Memphis and never had a drink. So she moved to New Orleans. Bad luck for her. You know, where there's a bar on every corner. You know, but she might never have discovered that she couldn't control her consumption of alcohol if she'd stayed in Memphis, because the condition would just not have been there for her. But by moving to New Orleans, she had a completely different social, you know, condition. You know.
So the seed was there. Is that what you'd say? The seed was there, but it never.
It never had the conditions to ripen.
Okay.
It doesn't mean it can't ripen in some other life. It just means, you know, that it's, you know, we have to have the causes and conditions. So, you know, it's a lot of things come into play of everything. So we can say, you know, we created the cause for everything we experience, but I mean, it's, you know, countless conditions have to be there, you know. So it's vast, and we don't have to, you know, just sit there thinking, oh, it's my fault. If that doesn't help, you know, we're just a player, just like everybody else. And we're all interdependent and are connected. So this kind of reliance, you know, you have to have studied some. You have to understand what the teachings are saying, you know. That we can feel confident that we have the capacity to change if we understand dependent arising. We are not stuck. Guilt is incorrect. We are one way or another. It's self-grasping. I am this. I can't change. And then we have a remedy. That's the third. Well, I mean, these don't always go in order. But the remedy is when we act on the mind of regret by performing an action. You know. So since we're talking about in the context of a purification practice, so you're setting yourself, oh, I'm going to do this practice as a remedy for my negative action. But it can also be an apology. You know, it can be, I'm going to go to, you know, I've been really greedy with my money, and I never give anybody who is begging for money any money, so I'm going to go work at the food bank for a while. You know, to try to, you know, counter this habit of miserliness. And so it's with this intention to repair the harm you've done. You know, so you want it to be congruent in some way. Now, we can use the practices that the Buddha gave us because, you know, he said this will, you know, but it's all about the mind. You can, you know, recite a practice. Meditation on emptiness is considered one of the best purifiers, but you have to have set the intention to use it that way. You know, you have to intentionally apply the four opponent powers to purify. So you may exhaust a negative, you do exhaust negative seed whenever it ripens. You know, you get sick and then, you know, so you're sick and then finally the sickness passes. Well, you've exhausted that seed. But for it to also act as a purification, you have to apply the four opponent powers and think about the other seeds that are in your mind stream that were placed there because of all the similar actions that you did that caused you to be sick in this, you know, for this to ripen. You know, so you have to be very intentional about doing it in order to increase your opportunities to purify. So other examples: apologizing, praying, observing precepts, giving, reciting the names of Buddhas, reciting sutras, mantras, creating images, all those satsas. These are all satsas. Meditating on emptiness. Again, you know, so these all work, but you have to use the four opponent powers while you're doing it. If you come to medicine puja or guru puja, you know, if you come in and you know, while you're setting your motivation, you say, I'm going to do this practice in order to purify my negative actions today, or, you know, 1973, you know, whatever. So, but you have to, you know, make that intention. That's the thought. To make a complete karmic action, whether it's positive or negative, you have to have the you know, the object, you know, the recognition, the motivation, underlying support, like wisdom, you know, the performance, you know, and then completing it. So resolve, the lowest R. So this can also be called, I think this one is sometimes called determination. You know, so this is when you are making the decision to change. You know, you're determined not to repeat the behavior. Now, as beginners, we can't just say, well, I'm determined never to do this again, because we will be lying. You know, we may want to do that, but the odds of our success are limited. So we want to go, you know, this always reminds me of, you know, one step at a time. You really want to make your promise, because you're making a commitment, you know, to not do this for a certain length of time, and you want to make it realistic. So there may be something that you know, I will never kill a human being again in this life. For the rest of this life, I won't kill a human being. But since I got sick, I must have done it in a past life, you know, but you can, you know. So things that you feel completely confident that you're, you know. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be in a car accident and kill someone, but that wouldn't be intentional killing. So, you know, you can, you know, but the other things, you know, I have a terrible impatience habit, and so that's something I can't promise to even do for 24 hours. Working on it. I have, however, been very successful with not getting angry. I used to be really angry. So, you know, I've had had a lot of success, so I've definitely made progress. I just haven't quite overcome the habit enough to where I don't even get impatient. So I have to be very, I have to do this in increments. And it's on my list every day, purification. So all four of the not remedies, all four of the opponent powers, that's wrong, are important to purify negative karma, but the most important is the power of resolve. Because this is what helps us avoid the negative action in the future. And of course, the best thing is to not do it again. Then you have nothing to purify. You can rejoice. So, whoops. That's right, I can't edit here. And then I like to end the practice
Can I
with
just comment
rejoicing.
on the previous one just real quick? It
Yeah.
seems to me that it may be the most important, but it's perhaps also the most difficult.
Of course. Does that surprise you? That the most important is the most difficult?
Not necessarily, but I thought it would be worth noting.
Yeah, it is very hard, you know? But this is the one that is going to make the difference, you know? It's when we can live up to our resolve. You know, I like to think of purification as, we're talking about the mind here, right? So we don't throw our mind in the washing machine, you know, but it really is about, you know, if you purify something and you never do it again, you have truly transformed your mind. You know, you may have been doing it for eons. It may have been, you know, always your habit. But if you stop it and never do it again, that's where we're headed. You know? But- yeah.
So then some practice that might assist us with strengthening resolve.
Doing it. And holding ourselves accountable. You know, we do it, and if we don't keep it, we purify that. You know, we regret not keeping it. You know. We try to remember our resolve before we actually act on whatever the thought is. Eventually, with enough practice, the thought won't arise because we're so determined. You know, but it's really about doing it. This is why this is a very important practice to do every day. Purification practice. Because you have to practice it. You know, you have to recognize. You know, it makes it very obvious when you're not really trying. You know? And I mean, we all have to pick and choose. We have to, you know, do what we can. So there may be things that you don't even, you don't even put out there in your purification practice because you know you're not going to change. You know, it's like, I'm really sorry, I'm still not taking care of these precious human aggregates because I like sugar and chocolate too much. You know, I can't resolve that I'm not going to do it for, 20 minutes. You know, so I'm just not interested. It's just not on my list of priorities. So it's just, we have to, so saying, oh, I really regret that is, probably a lie. Because it's, I clearly don't regret it because I can say it and eat, a cookie at the same time. I mean, it's just, so we have to know where we are. So, and I'm sure if the doctor ever comes to me and says, okay, you've finally crossed that line and you're now a diabetic or a pre-diabetic, I'm going to really be sad. But, I will have created the cause. So there we go. I'm not as bad as I sound, but I'm pretty bad. Does that make sense?
It does, but it just seems to be an age-old problem. Why do we continue to do things we know are not in our
Because we're
control?
stupid.
Because we're stupid, okay.
Let's put the word ignorant in great big letters. And, we believe that chasing after external things and avoiding things we don't like is gonna make us happy. We're totally convinced of that, and we are totally wrong.
That's really what it all comes down to.
Yeah, it's not complicated. You know, it's just hard to do because we have a strong, very practiced belief in it. We are completely habituated to chasing after these, you know, these small little ways of reducing our suffering. Okay.
I don't like to work either. Don't you think it's a little bit of, it feels good when we make a promise or plan to change something. As soon as we say that, it feels good. But then when we actually think about the work that it requires to change, that doesn't feel so good.
Yeah, well, that's a habit we want to change. You know, I mean, because this is why motivation is so important. To keep remembering, I don't want to suffer. Well, it's in your hands. You know, if you don't want to suffer, you know, that effort might not seem so bad. I'm no you know, make no mistake. But the point is we have to, you know, when we catch ourselves with that kind of thought, which we all do, you know, we have to go, well, you know, how far is that going to get you? You know, it's like, if your happiness is important to you, maybe you should work hard. You know, you have to have a little, you know, talking to that mind to keep saying, I shouldn't have to work hard. You know, I don't know. I've had relationships where people, you know, it's kind of like, shouldn't be this hard. It's like, yeah, right, dream on. So, you know, I mean, this is the thing. We really have to keep just watching our mind and seeing where we're lying to ourselves and seeing where, oh, maybe that doesn't work. You know, let's try this other idea out and then see how that goes. You know? But one of the real difficulties is accepting that karma's not instant. It's not like, you know, things in your life will change. It's your mind will change. It's that the things out here won't be that big of a deal because you know that they're really not that big of a deal. That it's not so important. That you can take everything that's happening as an opportunity to cultivate things that will bring you happiness. You know? Or not. I mean, this is what we do. And then when we, you know, follow our habit energy and go, oh, yeah, there I go again, you know, then you know, but it's just, then we have to go, okay, I haven't been practicing enough, you know, you know, it's just obvious from my behavior. So, I don't. Okay. Rejoicing. I don't want to forget rejoicing. This is another habit we have to cultivate. You know, many of us, it's sort of like the same thing. Oh, if I do something because there's something in it for me, you know, isn't it, that's not good enough. I need to just do it because it helps someone else or it doesn't harm something else. So we don't rejoice about what we do. You know? That's, you know, we need to, you know, there are many aspects of rejoicing. One is it's the antidote to jealousy. So if you have a tendency towards jealousy, you know, where you're envious of what other people have, the successes that other people have, the conditions other people have, or when something, you know, somebody comes to you with good news and you realize there's a part of you that's just sort of like, why can't this be me? You know, rejoicing is the antidote. So it's a good habit to develop.
Excuse me, what happens when the ego comes? Because, for example, you are like, you want to help somebody else, but behind, and you think you're doing right, but behind is the ego who really wanted to do it because you want to feel like, oh, I did something good.
Yeah, you just have to be aware of that.
It's just like
But you
it's
don't
just
stop
be
doing
tricky.
something good just because, you know, what you want to do is counter the pride. You don't want to counter the desire to do something good. You want to counter that desire for a good reputation.
Yeah, no, but my point is like, it's very in the back.
Yeah, because we're all
I wanna have
self-cherishing.
the intention, but is really the intention or is my?
No, it's going to be mixed.
It's like, it's like how you can know is really I wanna.
Oh, if you're
it's
not a-
like ego who
If you're
wants-
not a bodhisattva, you can know self-interest is in there. You know, what we're trying to do is bring our awareness to that and try to counter that directly. Doesn't mean we want to change our development of, positive actions, but we want to work on the mental state that's grasping at this self, that keeps thinking, I. So this is why they recommend things like, anonymous donations, so that you do the action, but nobody knows about it. And then that feeling of, I want people to know about it, you just keep saying, too bad. That's not what's important. So, you want to counter that pride because pride makes us suffer. This is the source of our suffering, are these states of mind. Our greed makes us suffer, our pride makes us suffer, our jealousy makes us suffer. So we want to counter them. Yes.
And the cause and effect, the delayed effect. Is it possible to go through your life and not suffer and pay for it in later lives? Not know that you're paying for it?
No, I doubt it. I mean, look at everybody's life. It's mostly a mixture of things. After all, one day you're going to die. So you're going to have some kind of suffering. It's not like you can hold on to it forever. No, it's possible to be completely I mean, what we could, we didn't get there.
So then you could be deluded and distorted.
We are
and
deluded.
Well, I know we're deluded, but I mean, we could be so deluded, an individual could be so deluded and have a distortion of reality and themselves such that they don't realize that they're suffering.
Sure, but I mean, so, it doesn't mean it's true.
Which? That they're not suffering?
Yeah.
Oh.
So they are having suffering seeds ripen, they just don't see it as such.
Okay, why is that?
Either because they're deluded or they're further along the path than I am,
Oh, okay.
I mean, we just have to understand that, it's like, one of the advantages we have in a precious human rebirth is we have enough resources and we have suffering so that we can see that there's a point of wanting to change. We're kind of skipping to the next topic. So when we go through the realms, the God realms and the demigod realms, they have a life that pretty much has no suffering. It's a really happy realm rebirth. So, however, the end of their lives are really difficult because it's like they're crashing down from the God realms, So, so they don't tend to practice. All they're doing in their lifetime is exhausting positive karma. And so their rebirth is likely to be less comfy. So, anyway. Well, maybe we'll go there. All right.
I have a question here.
Yes.
Ego, we talk about, or self-cherishing,
It's self-grasping.
self-grasping. So,
Ego is self-grasping.
Right, so in this case, where I find myself sometimes wanting to be careful is with too much self-congratulation. Again, I'm exposing all my neuroses here, I'm sorry. So, yeah, so how,
You just have to try
okay.
and fail and go, oh, You know, I've fallen over to pride,
Mhm.
you know. So what do we rejoice about?
Well, for me, I tend to kind of want to lean towards being grateful for,
You want to do that too. But let's not mix this topic.
Okay.
So rejoicing. What do we rejoice about?
Our efforts, the small stuff,
Name something.
our efforts to do the practice, to, for opponent powers. Smiles walking by someone,
Why?
because it takes effort to look at someone and smile.
Why though would that be something to rejoice about?
It's positive,
Because-
and it might have helped someone.
It might help
Perception.
someone. You know, that you're trying to put positive energy out there, so you might help someone. You know, when we do practices, it's, you know, we can rejoice because, you know, we're following the instructions of the teachings, and this will help us, you know, hopefully change our minds, you know. So it's, we see that it will be beneficial. You know? So that's what we rejoice over, not, oh, aren't I wonderful? It's the actions, the thoughts that are wonderful. Isn't it wonderful that people have kind thoughts at all? Isn't it wonderful that people think of others at all? You know? When you look at our own minds and realize just how much I is in there, you know, it's wonderful that it's not always there. You know, that we do things where we're there, that's very other directed. That's our Buddha potential. That's our proof that we have that capacity. So there's no I in rejoicing. You know, rejoicing about a thought or an action of body and speech. There's no I in that. I is just the label to our body and mind. It's the mind that does something, or the body that does something. There's no controlling I over here. That's separate. That's the mistake we make. I did this. No, the causes and conditions were there. You know, so your mind went this direction, and then your body followed. The you or my, blah, 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 are just convenient ways to communicate. And this is one of those easy ways to see when what you call the ego is coming in there is this I did that. So, you know, this, you know, to notice that this is what we're holding on to, as opposed to, you know, really recognizing, my mind's going in the direction that I'm trying to go in, you know. And you don't even have to do the I part. You just, you know, be happy about the mind. So sometimes it's just really helpful, instead of to think about, oh, all the doctors who did this, all the nurses, all the teachers, all the, you know, when you're rejoicing, thinking about all these people who do all these good things, is that instead you just think all about the thoughts of kindness, the thoughts of generosity, the willingness to give, the willingness to do very hard work because of the need of someone else, you know, but just to put it in terms of mental actions or physical actions or actions of speech, you know, not people. People are just the label we put on top of these things. But the mind and body, you know, they're dependent arisings, and we're just trying to create the dependent arisings that are going in a direction that will actually bring us lasting happiness. Does that help?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. These are not easy things to do. It takes a lot of practice. But one of them is this idea of, you know, when you notice you're saying I, you know, that you might have, you know, this self-grasping sense of self, you know, which of course you're going to find. I mean, this is why we're still stuck here. But the more we can try to put some separation, you know, no, it's that all the causes and conditions came together, and this is the result. Yay. And then the last step is to dedicate your merits. You always want, if you don't set an intention and a motivation at the beginning, you have nothing to dedicate. So you definitely want to do that. The more intentional we are, you know, then the more we can, you know, we can't give away our merits if we didn't actually, intention is everything here, you know. It's like, it doesn't matter that you successfully went around today and didn't step on any kind of insect. That's not meritorious. But if you went around today and thought, I'm going to make sure I don't step on any insects, then you set an intention and you get merit for every moment that you didn't step on an insect. Because it's, you know, it's the mind. I don't want to kill. This is the power of vows. When you take vows, every moment that you're keeping that vow, you're earning the merit of refraining from doing whatever it is that the vow says don't do. It also means for every time you know, don't keep the vow, you're getting lots of demerit. So, it's a, you know, catch-22. So, and you want to be skillful in your dedications to try to include this idea of, you know, you want to, you know, have it last until there's no suffering sentient beings at all. So it doesn't exhaust. If you just say, you know, for this life, then it'll exhaust in this life. Again, it's all about the mind. So the power of regret purifies the experience similar to the cause, which is like, you know, in killing, it's getting killed, dying young, getting sick. The power of reliance, the power of refuge, bodhicitta, where when you rely, you're relying on like the teachings or your future Buddhahood, but you're also relying on our desire to benefit others. Because when you think about sentient beings, you know, we've talked about this before, you know, that all of our good qualities come from the needs of others. There's no need to develop patience if no one's angry with you or no one's trying to harm you. There's no need to develop generosity. Nobody needs anything from you. So we are completely dependent on the needs of others in order to become enlightened. So that step purifies the environmental result, which for killing is living in a place where the food and medicine are not conducive to good health. And then the power of the remedy, the action that you do, it purifies the throwing karma. So if it's a complete karmic action that can throw you into a rebirth, it purifies that. Keeps you from going to the lower realms. The power of the resolve purifies the action similar to the cause. It helps that tendency, you know, which in a sense is the worst result because it's the habit to keep performing the non-virtue, which propels one back into the lower realms. This is the first practice I got, you know. I met Venerable Ramana 2 months into me going to a Buddhist center and took refuge, and this was the practice. You know, so I'm very familiar with her work, how she says it, does it, because I've been doing it for 20 years. So, okay. So we'll talk about next the truth of suffering, that all-pervasive stuff. We'll do it next week. And then about, you know, what are our options? If we don't get a perfect human rebirth, what do gonna go in that to great detail, because, you know, it's out of our control pretty much. But if it helps you motivate, like I've said before, fear tends to paralyze me. It doesn't really encourage me. So the hell realms, you know, just make me like, oh God, I know I'm there. So it doesn't really encourage me. But for some people, it really is a motivator. So don't let you know, that's my response to it. If that's not your response to it, read all about them. Because it'll help. Okay, so we're not going to go there. All right. So let's do a purification practice. Oh, I think it's in this book. And then this book, the short Vajrasattva. It may not be, maybe in the silver one. Or I'm just going to read it anyway. So I'm sending you the
Yes, 190.
I'm sending you a short Vajrasattva practice.
199, I think it is.
Well, actually, what I want you to do is just turn to page, I've got 204, Beata already gave it to you. So you have the mantra in front of you, but I'm going to lead you in a different one, because I can. Sometimes I just want to be able to do two things and I can't do it. Anybody else relate to it? So, y'all have that page in front of you. It doesn't have a picture. But this is the image. So in Tibetan Buddhism, we use a lot of imagery and visualizations of images. What?
I'm saying it cut out.
Oh, yeah. So, 205, I think I said.
204.
Okay, 204.
204 in the silver book.
The silver.
You just had it. On page 197.
Okay, so, the idea of these visualizations is to help, what they call it is bringing us close to the deities. What the idea is, did you find it?
Yeah.
She found it for me.
Huh?
Yeah, she found it for me, but it's in the silver book.
Yeah, they're all in the silver book.
Oh, okay.
You just missed that part of the conversation.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
See,
It's
that one up there,
204.
one on 204 is different than that one up
it's
there.
the same one, it's a different transliteration of it.
Mm.
It's the same, no, listen, it's a different, transliteration of it.
Okay.
So I find this one easier to pronounce. Okay, it's what's in the How to Meditate book. Okay, theoretically, these are pronounced the same way. I also find it easier to have short little phrases. I'm the one who had to have Geshe Gellick sit in a car one night when I was dropping him off from teaching and record it because I couldn't learn. So, it was so sad. But that's what you'll find. So you'll see, like in our prayer books, I'll often say the common pronunciation and the Tibetan pronunciation. You can't even begin to pronounce it, the Tibetan pronunciation. You know, how the phonetically, you know, it's like a total foreign language to me. But, so. But some people find it easier to look at the book than trying to look up here, so I'm just trying to, oh, something, we can rejoice. Something really nice happened there.
Good performance.
Keep hoping. I don't have, oh. Sometimes it's really stupid. Sorry, I'm just. Yes, introduce yourselves. See, they think we end at 8:30.
Can I adjust the AC by a degree?
Yeah. I'm always good with that. Okay. It's not, yeah, yes, you can have one, but it's not gonna be the same either. It might be the same as in the prayer book. Okay, but the practice is not the same. So though I'm emailing you the practice I'd like you to try.
Oh, okay.
Because there's the difference between highest yoga tantra and lower tantra. The booklets are highest yoga tantra, which Rinpoche is perfectly comfortable with you using. I'm not comfortable teaching it. So, so I prefer the version in the How to Meditate book. It may be updated, in fact, I don't know if it's the same version. But anyway, we're gonna do this one. So, I'm just gonna lead you, and I just wanted you to have that page open just so that you could, see it, see the mantra. So first, just kind of go inward. And try to visualize about 4 inches above the crown of your head an open white lotus bearing a moon disk upon which is seated Vajrasattva. So you can look at the image of Vajrasattva if that's helpful. He is white, translucent, and adorned with beautiful ornaments and clothes of celestial silk. Every aspect of the visualization is in the nature of light. He has 2 hands crossed at his heart. The right holds a vajra, symbolic of great bliss. The left holds a bell, symbolic of the wisdom of emptiness. The vajra and bell together signify his attainment of the enlightened state, because those are the 2 wings to get to enlightenment, method and wisdom. The inseparable unity of the wisdom and form bodies. At his heart is a moon disk with the syllable hum at its center, and the letters of the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva standing clockwise around its edge. And now we'll recite a prayer. You're not going to have that. Okay. Maybe we have to use this prayer. Such resistance. Okay, so on page 201. We'll just do this practice. I'm just going to give up. Okay. I am going to send you a slightly different one. So it's always helpful when you're doing any practice to visualize. The tradition is to visualize on your right side as your father and on your left side as your mother. And all those sentient beings that you feel are very difficult or that are your enemies, that you visualize them in front of you. And you visualize all your loved ones and your friends, other than your parents, behind you. And then you imagine all sentient beings, whether they're mosquitoes or snakes, but you envision them in human form surrounding you. So you're like in the sea of humanity, okay? And then you visualize your object of refuge, so like the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha. Or if you have refuge in another tradition, you do that. Or you can just even His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Anybody that you have confidence in their compassion and their wisdom. And we just imagine that this is your root teacher. And then we recite the refuge prayer. I forever take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and in all the 3 vehicles, in the dakinis of secret mantra yoga, and the heroes and heroines, and empowering goddesses and the bodhisattvas. But most of all, I take refuge in my holy Guru forever. I forever take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and in all the 3 vehicles, in the dakinis of secret mantra yoga, and the heroes and heroines, and the empowering goddesses and the bodhisattvas. But most of all, I take refuge in my holy Guru I forever take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and in all the three vehicles, in the Dakinis of secret mantra yoga, in the heroes and heroines, and the empowering goddesses and bodhisattvas. But most of all, I take refuge in my holy Guru forever. So now we want to generate the power of regret. So I'll read this, and y'all just kind of go inward and use the power of your mind. So first recall the definition of negative karma, which is any action that results in suffering. It's usually an action motivated by ignorance, attachment, or aversion. So almost every action we do 24 hours a day is motivated by worldly concern, attachment to the comfort of this life. It is like this from birth to death in this life and has been like that from beginningless rebirths. Nearly every action we've ever created has been non-virtuous, the cause of suffering. So you want to take a moment to really, try to bring to mind something specific that you regret. Some unskillful action that you may have done today. And allow yourself to feel the suffering that you may have caused. The suffering to yourself and the suffering to others. And then reflect on impermanence and death. Really thinking that it's a miracle that we're still here. And that we have this opportunity. We've met the teachings, and we have this opportunity to purify our negative karma. And then we want to think, in fact, we can read together the Power of Dependence on 203. But I am not practicing this Vajrasattva purification for myself alone. The purpose of my life is to release all held beings, pretas, animals, humans, asuras, suras, and intermediate state beings from all their suffering and its causes, and lead them to unsurpassed enlightenment. In order to do this, I must first reach enlightenment myself. Therefore, I must purify all my negative karma immediately by practicing the Vajrasattva meditation and recitation. This is this practice. We wanted to keep cultivating this desire to do things for the benefit, to become enlightened so that we can truly benefit others. So refresh your image of Vajrasattva, and you see them as you see him as the embodiment of your teacher with unbearable compassion, willing to be with us to help us purify our negative actions. So on the moon disk at Vajrasattva's heart stands a hum encircled by a garland of the 100-syllable mantra. A powerful stream of white nectar will flow down from the hum and mantra garland and cleanse us of all sickness, spirit harm, negative karma, and obscurations. So the first time we recite the mantra, we try to think of purifying all these actions of body, so that we just visualize being, anything we've ever done with our bodies, rolling your eyes, stomping off, slamming doors, sexual misconduct, stealing, killing, insects, whatever, you know, and then we can imagine, you know, all the other things similar to it. And so we visualize as we recite the mantra, this, this powerful nectar. It's like nectar, like, it's like a, to me, I visualize like, you know, like what you'd see at fire hose, you know, this powerful stream of light and nectar, you know, pushing out from my body all the negativities of body, you know, so. Okay. So it's Om Vajrasattva Samaya. Oh. Okay. Y'all need to say it. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Dino Patita Dido Me Bawa Suto Kayo Me Bawa Supo Kayo Me Bawa Anurakto Me Bawa Sarva Siddhi Me Paryatsa Sarva Karma Sutsa Me Sitam Shiram Guru Hum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Mutsa Vajra Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva Ahum Pe. Okay. Everybody, you got that?
Of course.
Okay, so let's do it 2 more times. Picture that you're being filled with this wonderful nectar, purifying all the mistakes of body you've ever done, caused others to do, rejoiced in others doing, whatever. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Dino Patita Dido Me Bawa Suto Kayo Me Bawa Supo Kayo Me Bawa Anurakto Me Bawa Sarva Siddhi Me Paryatsa Sarva Karma Sutsa Me Sitam Shriyam Guru Hum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Mutsa Vajra Bhava Maha Sameya Sattva Ahum Pe. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Dino Patita Dido Me Bawa Suto Kayo Me Bawa Supo Kayo Me Bawa Anurakto Me Bawa Sarva Siddhi Me Paryatsa Sarva Kama Sutsa Me Sitam Shriyam Guru Hum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Mutsa Vajra Bhava Maha Sameya Sattva Ahum Pe. Now you want to feel like Vajrasattva is extremely pleased with you. Vajrasattva is rejoicing with our efforts. We want to cultivate this belief that we really can purify our negative actions. Okay? And normally, you know, when you get skilled, you do this 7 times for the body. And now we want to do it for speech. So again, you visualize the nectar coming in, but now instead of pushing out all the negativities out of your body from below, you're filling your body with this light nectar and pushing out all the negativities of speech through the upper part of your body. You know? And it just disappears. It doesn't go to somebody else. You know? So it's like what they say, it's like when you're filling a dirty glass of water, you know, the stuff floats to the top, and then if you keep pouring, it'll, you know, get out of the glass. So it's that way. So, Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Dino Patita Dido Me Bawa Suto Kayo Me Bawa Supo Kayo Me Bawa Anurakta Me Bawa Sarva Siddhi Me Pariyasa, Sarva Kama Sutsame, Sitam Shriyam Guru Hum, Ha 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 Ho, Bhagavan, Sarva Tathagata, Vajra Mame Mutsa, Vajra Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva Ahum Te. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya, Manu Palaya, Vajra Sattva Dino Patita, Dido Me Bawa, Sutokaya Me Bawa, Supokaya Me Bawa, Anurakta Me Bawa, Sarva Siddhi Me Prayata, Sarva Kama Sutsame, Sitam Shiram Kuru Hum, Ha 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 Ho, Bhagavan, Sarva Tathagata, Vajra Mame Musa, Vajra Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva Ahum Te. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya, Manu Palaya, Vajra Sattva Dino Patita, Dido Me Bawa, Sutokayo Me Bawa, oh sorry. Anuraka Me Bawa, Sarva Siddhi Me Prayasa, Sarva Kama Sutsame, Sitam Shuram Kuru Hum, Ha 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 Ho, Bhagavan, Sarva Tathagata, Vajra Mame Mutsa, Vajra Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva Ahum Te. So now you want to visualize that you're purifying all the negativities of the mind, all the thoughts, all the ill will, all the, covetousness, all the, just all the garbage we throw. So again, this time though, you visualize all that negativity of thought, like that it just goes straight to the center of your heart chakra. It's this, very dark, dense little rock. And you visualize the light coming from Vajrasattva just shattering it like a laser and completely destroying it so it's all gone, completely gone. So first, before we do that, we rejoice that Vajrasattva is happy about us purifying our speech, because I forgot that part. So always good to feel happy about that. And I'll quit moving so that doesn't move. Okay, I'll try. Okay, so now we're doing mine. Om Vajrasattva Samaya, Manu Palaya, Vajrasattva Dino Patita, Dido Me Bawa, Sutokayo Me Bawa, Supokayo Me Bawa, Anurakto Me Bawa, Sarva Siddhi Me Pariyasa, Sarva Karma Sutsame, Sitam Shiram Kuru Hum, Ha 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 Ho, Bhagavan, Sarva Tathagata, Vajra Mame Mutsa, Vajra Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva Ahum Te. Om Vajrasattva Samaya, Manu Palaya, Vajrasattva Dino Patita, Dido Me Bawa, Sutokaya Me Bawa, Supokaya Me Bawa, Anurakto Me Bawa, Sarva Siddhi Sarva Kama Sutsame, Sitam Shiram Kuru Hum, Ha 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 Ho, Bhagavan, Sarva Tathagata, Vajra Mame Mutsa, Vajra Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva Ahum Te. Om Vajrasattva Samaya, Manu Palaya, Vajrasattva Dino Patita, Dido Me Bawa, Sutokaya Me Bawa, Supokaya Me Bawa, Anurakta Me Bawa, Sarva Siddhi Me Prayata, Sarva Karma Sutsame, Sitam Shiram Kuru Hum, Bhagavan, Sarva Tathagata, Vajra Mame Mutsa, Vajra Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva Ahum Te. So now, I think Vajrasattva is extremely pleased with you because now you've purified your body, speech, and mind. He's very happy for us. That's why he's pleased, is because we're doing something that will help us get out of suffering. So. So now, so you can read the bottom of page 204. In fact, let's read the meaning. I know. Okay, it's 9 o'clock. If you need to leave, leave. So I'll try to be quick. Okay, so The meaning of the mantra, which I'm also sending you, is probably slightly different from this because it's a paraphrase. It's not word for word, but I'm also sending you the word for word translation of the mantra. So you, Vajrasattva, have generated the holy mind according to your pledge. Your holy mind is enriched with the simultaneous holy actions of releasing transmigratory beings from samsara. Whatever happens in my life, happiness or suffering, good or bad, with a pleased holy mind, never give up, but please guide me. Please stabilize all happiness, including the happiness of the upper realms, actualize all actions and sublime and common realizations, and please make the glory of the five wisdoms abide in my heart. Then think, from the crown of my head, Guru Vajrasattva says, child of the race, your negativities, obscurations, and broken and damaged pledges have been completely purified. Child of the race means child of the Mahayana path. So that's the race they're talking about, the Mahayana path. So now you need to generate the power of restraint or resolve. You have to make you want to try to make a determination not to refrain from all those actions, negative actions that you can easily refrain from, forever. And then whatever negative actions you can't so easily refrain from for as long as you see as realistic. It can be 5 minutes, it can be 3 days, it can be whatever you think you can do. Like a few seconds. And then we can recite at the top of 205. Before Guru Vajrasattva, I vow never again to commit those negative actions from which I can easily abstain, and not to commit for a day, an hour, at least a few seconds, those negative actions from which I find it difficult to abstain. So Guru Vajrasattva is extremely pleased with your pledge. Vajrasattva melts into light and dissolves into you. So this, when you're visualizing this, I'm not sure you're supposed to do this unless you've had the initiation, but but it's this idea that your mind is merging with this enlightened being's mind, your root guru, so that we have. This is about having the confidence of of our resultant Buddhahood. That our mind's really no different. It has the basis, it has everything it needs in order to achieve an enlightened state. Okay? But we need to rely on our teacher, on enlightened beings in order to get there. All right? And so then we want to remember emptiness, that in emptiness there is no I, creator of negative karma. There is no action of creating of negative karma. There is no negative karma created. And then we dedicate. So dedicate on your way out in thought. So you just, due to all these merits of the 3 times collected by all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, myself, and all other sentient beings, which appear to be real from their own side, but which are empty. May I, who appears to be real but is empty, achieve Guru Vajrasattva's enlightenment, which appears to be real but is empty, and lead all sentient beings who appear to be real but are totally empty to that enlightenment, which appears to be real but is empty, by myself alone, who appears to be real but is totally empty, non-existent from my own side. So we can just stop there since we're so over time. But and so the practice that I'm emailing you is in a different form than this, but they're all different methods for remembering these 4 opponent powers. So you can give that a try this week if you're interested. Well, I actually just recommend you giving it a go. This is a practice that Lama Zopa Rinpoche is always saying we are insane if we do not do every day, because it's that ability to keep reminding us where we want to go, and when we slip up and how we want to keep trying. So thank you. Sorry I'm so late.
Thank you, Venerable.
And if anyone didn't come to the first class, then I probably aren't on that list. So if you want these emails, fill out the form out here. But if you were at the first karma class, then you're on her list.
Also, if you have if you're doing the online, if you have access to the FPMT online thing, you can find a recording of this mantra, which I just couldn't seem to do. But, because this mantra's, because it's part of one of a meditation. So, anyway, but I'll try to find it. Thank you.